What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Mike Budenholzer Fell Asleep on the Sideline. My name is Zach, and of course, we are going to be talking about the historic upset that the 8th-seeded Miami Heat had over the top-seeded Milwaukee Bucks on Wednesday. With their 128 to 126 victory on Wednesday night, the Miami Heat became just the 6th 8th seed to upset the 1 seed in the first round of the NBA playoffs, joining the Sixers, the Grizzlies, the Warriors, the Knicks, and the Denver Nuggets. I totally slipped on the last one, but whatever. We're going to go ahead and move past that. The okay, well, first of all, I'm still trying to process everything that happened on Wednesday. I watched the entire game from start to finish, and man, if I were a Bucks fan, I know that sports isn't everything, but this was a horrible way for Milwaukee to go down. This series went just 5 games. Now, I understand that Giannis Antetokounmpo was not present for 2 of them, and when he was present, he was arguably the best player on the court, right up there with Jimmy Butler. But it is even now more impressive to me how the Bucks were able to win a title back in 2021 because I'm not in the business of assigning blame to one singular individual in instances like this because basketball is a team sport and you win as a team and you lose as a team. However, Mike Budenholzer stinks. This guy is a goofball. He is a tremendous goofball. The streets are saying that Mike Budenholzer is just the NBA's Mike McCarthy, and I'm tempted to believe this. Now, Mike Budenholzer has been an NBA coach for a long time and a very successful coach at that. He's gone to the playoffs more times than I can count off the top of my head. I believe won Coach of the Year back when he was with the Atlanta Hawks and that team won 60 games. Of course, he is an NBA champion, but it is almost that he is successful in spite of his ability to coach, not because of it. Because although Milwaukee had a plethora of problems over this series, and in particular over games 3 and 4, it is apparent that Mike Budenholzer did not do anything to assist them from the sideline. Just some quick numbers for you. In both games 3 and 4, as the game went on, getting closer to the third. I mean, and even the fourth quarter, more so than anything else. Miami outscored Milwaukee by 16 points combined over the fourth quarters of Game 3 and Game 4. I mean, games 4 and 5. Pardon me. I've said 3 and 4 multiple times now, but it's 4 and 5. The Bucks scored, what was it, 16 points in the fourth quarter of Game 5, and 25 points in the fourth quarter of Game 4. And they still managed to be outscored by 16. For some context, guys, that is twice as bad as the scoring differential between the Brooklyn Nets and the Philadelphia 76ers in the fourth quarter. And the Brooklyn Nets are a team that is objectively worse than Milwaukee. They managed to only be outscored by 8 points against a far superior team. Additionally, Milwaukee's offense was almost just non existent in the fourth quarter, not even because of the scoring numbers, but their efficiency was absolutely atrocious. Try 26% shooting from the field overall in the fourth quarters of Game 4 and Game 5. Miami, 55.3% shooting. Just absolutely remarkable. And now, I don't want to spend the entire video shitting on Milwaukee, even though it is justified. I do, at a point, want to get to the praise that I have for Jimmy Butler and also Eric Spoelstra, but we got to talk about Mike Budenholzer, man. Game 5 was probably the worst coaching performance I have ever seen from an elite coach. I mean, I saw Tyronn Lue outcoach Steve Kerr in the 2016 finals. I've seen Doc Rivers blow multiple 3-1 leads with his teams, but yet Mike Budenholzer's snooze fest on the sideline is one that belongs in the history books. His team is getting shellacked. The offense is flailing like they were a fish that was just dragged onto a boat in the middle of the ocean. And he's over there looking like an anime character snoozing at the end of regulation in game 5. Milwaukee lets Jimmy Butler tie the game. And there's, I think, zero point 0.9 seconds left on the clock. Now, Milwaukee has a timeout, and they could use this timeout to advance the ball and get a catch and shoot off. 0.9 seconds is more than enough time to draw up something, like an actual shot attempt, not just a lob toward the basket. And what do? They inbound the ball under their own basket and don't even get a shot. How do you let this happen? You're fighting for your playoff lives. You're in desperation mode. And no one on the sideline is like, hey, bud, we got a timeout we can use. Astounding. Now, of course, not the end of the world because you're going to overtime. And now, yes, you've unraveled throughout the fourth quarter. You still have Giannis. You still have Chris Middleton. There is a chance that you could salvage this in the fourth quarter, despite how bad you've been all game long. And they get, once again, to the end of overtime. They give up the go-ahead basket with five seconds left. 5. And they have 2 timeouts. And they used 0 of them. 0 timeouts they used in overtime to draw up a play for Giannis, for Middleton, for fucking Brook Lopez. And instead, they inbound the ball, and Giannis loses the handle. I believe he lost the handle. It winds up in Grayson Allen's hands. And what is Grayson Allen doing with the game on the line? I don't know. But just the sheer dysfunction from the Milwaukee Bucks is one that has to be taught somewhere at the high school level, at the college level, of how not to behave as a basketball team. And I put a bunch of onus on the players as well for just not executing down the stretch. But it's there is a point where the coach has to step in and figure out something. And Mike Budenholzer simply did none of that. And it doesn't even stop offensively because Milwaukee's execution down the stretch of games 4 and 5 was atrocious. I think like we recognize that. But they didn't even adjust how they defended Jimmy Butler. In game 4, he had 56. In game 5, he had 42. And what does Mike Budenholzer elect? He elects to continue to have Jimmy Butler guarded one-on-one by Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, Giannis, whomever the defender was. And now Giannis and Drew are elite defenders. But Jimmy Butler is an elite offensive talent, and he's really the only guy on Miami who can beat you. You have to figure out a way to get the ball out of his hands. You have to double team him at some point. I don't know what I don't have that information. Unfortunately, the double team information is not available to me, but just going from what I saw, no double teams were thrown at Jimmy Butler down the stretches of games 4 or game 5. Additionally, they decided to play drop coverage with Brook Lopez in the pick and roll. Now, Brook Lopez, Defensive Player of the Year finalist, he has no business guarding Jimmy Butler outside of 15 feet. That's the reality of the situation. Jimmy Butler was cooking Milwaukee all series long. No one could guard him from anywhere. Let's just be honest about that. But to not adjust at all is a tremendous indictment on Mike Budenholzer, and even more so when you consider the fact that Chris Middleton was cooking in game 5, was 6 of 12 from the field in the first half. Now, Eric Spoelstra, I don't think that Eric Spoelstra gets enough credit for being as good of a coach as he is because Miami has struggled a little bit over the last couple of years, this year being the 8th seed, and then last year, being the top seed, but ultimately combusting, or ultimately not reaching the level that people thought they should have. But Spoelstra, in terms of schematics, in terms of game management, in terms of X's and O's, is arguably the best coach in basketball. The second half starts. And I don't recall when he started doing this, but throughout the third and fourth quarter, Chris Middleton was seeing double teams. Miami was not letting him beat them. He shot 4 of 11 in the second half, and in overtime, missed the only shot that he took, finishing 4 of 12 in the second half in overtime, bringing his total shooting performance to 10 and 24, if my math serves me correct, which is just shy of 42%. That is what elite coaches do in the postseason, regardless of what the situation is. It is your only responsibility to make adjustments, whether it's rotationally, whether it's in terms of X's and O's, and overall, I think that Mike Budenholzer is more to blame for this upset than anybody else. And I understand that, Giannis was absolutely dog shit from the free throw line in game 5. Shot just 10 of 23. As a superstar, as arguably the best player in basketball, as an MVP candidate, as a two-time MVP before this, like you have to be better. You have to. And the unfortunate reality is that it's difficult for Milwaukee to overcome that because they can't lean on Giannis in any other way aside from him going downhill and playing in the post. And it's even made more difficult because he's going up against Bam Adebayo, who is one of the few guys in the NBA who can actually defend Giannis straight up in a 1v1 situation. So just from top to bottom, overall, a very, very horrific showing over the final couple games of the series. And on paper, listen, I know Giannis was hurt, but we're going to take a quick gander at this box score. 23 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 assists on 53% shooting. Now, those are mid numbers, I would say. But Giannis did barely play 30 minutes per game. So on a per minute basis, he's still Giannis. But 45% shooting from the free throw line, you're not going to beat anybody if your star player is like that. If your star player is shooting that badly and going to the line as frequently as Giannis was. Giannis attempted 23 free throws in game 5. Miami attempted 17. Milwaukee as a whole got 45 attempts from the free throw line, and they managed to lose a game on their home court. It's astounding. There's really no other way to describe it. Now, of course, we cannot finish this segment without talking about Jimmy Butler. Man, I know that he says playoff Jimmy is not a thing. It is 1,000,000% a thing. Now, and this game was on NBA TV last night, and I forgot who the fuck was. I forgot who was telling this story. I think it was um Ashley Shahamadi, I believe her name is, the sideline reporter. Her name evades me, but she was doing the sideline reporting for this game and talking about how Jimmy Butler may think that playoff Jimmy does not exist, but playoff Jimmy does exist because when you get to the playoffs, there is a level of desperation that you reach as a player and as a team. And when that level of desperation kicks in, your star player has to take their game to a different level and basically do anything that's necessary to win, whether it's scoring, whether it's playing defense on the best player, whether it's giving out 12 assists. And that is playoff Jimmy. Playoff Jimmy recognizes the fact that Miami, especially this year, was tremendously deficient on offense in more or less every regard. Field goal makes, field goal efficiency, scoring points. They just did not have a good year offensively. And for them to beat a number 1 seed, as insurmountable as it may have seemed, he needed to play at a level that the you guys before him have reached. And he did that, dude. 37.6 points, 6 rebounds, just shy of 5 assists on damn near 60% shooting and 12 of 27 from 3. Jimmy Butler has been the best player in these playoffs thus far. And, that's saying a lot because best case scenario, and this is not like I'm not trying to like shit on Jimmy, but he is third team All NBA at best, but his talent is well beyond that. It's just that during the regular season, he doesn't need to put on these heroic performances because there is no sense of desperation unless it's down the stretch of the season in the play-in, whatever. But he's played better than Jason Tatum, than Kevin Durant, than LeBron James, than Steph Curry. The only guy who has remotely been near Jimmy's level is Devin Booker. And that is just Booker, kind of in the same boat, just on a better team, obviously. But listen, I don't know if Miami can make a run to the finals, but even if they don't, this stretch from Jimmy Butler, I believe, goes down as one of the greatest in NBA history. In terms, if you want to discuss like single series performances, this has to be up there. It has to be. Even in recent memory. And, maybe, the recency bias is kicking in hard, but we obviously cannot discount the series that Giannis had in the 2021 finals, especially that 51-point closeout game in um in game 7. But like, you know, I'm thinking LeBron in 2016 type shit. Now, obviously, the context is a little bit different, and I still believe that across the board, LeBron was better than Jimmy. But very rarely is there a player who just every night does the impossible and does the impossible while making it look easy. I mean, this guy, Jimmy Butler, tied the tied the game at 128 off of a circle cut where he was double teamed and he converted on a, like, I don't even know what to call it. It was like a fadeaway floater almost, just in overall remarkable performance. And then of course Bam had a solid performance in this game as well, arguably his best of the series. 20 points, 10 boards. I mean, did not shoot that great, but played spectacular defense on Giannis down the stretch as well. Gabe Vincent, 22. Don't know where the fuck these 22 points came from, but they were there. And it was an ugly game. It was a grimy game. It was an especially putrid game from Milwaukee. And just to go back to the timeouts for a second, Max Strus was on the Levitard show Thursday morning, and the Miami Heat in the huddle at the end of regulation were also perplexed that Milwaukee elected not to use their timeout. And Eric Spoelstra in the huddle is like, they had a timeout and they didn't use it. Like, they were frazzled. They were noticeably shaken down the stretch, the Milwaukee Bucks were. And I couldn't help but watch this team, the Milwaukee Bucks that is. And if they did manage to complete this comeback on Miami, they would get absolutely shredded by either Philly or Boston in particular, because Miami is not a particularly dynamic offense outside of Jimmy Butler, and the box score shows that. So you put them up against a well-oiled machine that is led by Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and is enhanced by um, Al Horford, Malcolm Brogdon, Marcus Smart. I think it would have been an absolute bloodbath in that regard. But shout out to the Miami Heat. I don't know if this is the most remarkable or if this is the best eighth seed upset of a one seed, but it's certainly up there. I mean, they ran a poll on NBA TV of which upset was the best, more or less, and I was going with the We Believe Warriors because that one, upsetting the 67 win Dallas Mavericks with Dirk Nowitzki, who had just won MVP, uh, incredible. I mean, just like looking back through it, it's that one. The Knicks upset over Miami in '99, which was the lockout shortened season where New York was like 4 games over 500. I mean, the Memphis Grizzlies upset in 2011 over San Antonio as well, because that was a fully healthy Spurs team, complete with Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and like in all of whom are in their primes. I mean, that is the same Spurs team that won a title 2 years later. I mean, not 2 years later, in 2014. Pardon me, but man, just an epic collapse by Milwaukee, and that is not a word that I use ironically a lot of the time, but truly, truly a remarkable performance on both sides of the court and from both coaches, just in opposite ways. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna close this one out. Thank you guys so very much for coming to hang out with me today. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel as well. Everything I'm associated with is down in the description box below: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. The Hedging Screens podcast is available wherever podcasts are hosted. That's Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Follow the show, leave a rating, leave a review, and with that, I'm gonna catch you guys in the next one.